Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mahima. I'm an international best-selling author and the founder of the Mahima Mindset. We travel around the world finding extraordinary people who are ready to lead and disrupt. We're living in a time where we need people to find their voices and find their inner power and wisdom and start sharing it on a massive scale with as many people as are willing to pay attention to the voice of Human 2.0, which is human development, the understanding that one of our greatest resources on this planet are humans. And if we can work together, we can co-create a much better world for everybody involved. So I'm excited to bring this interview here with you today with Boomer, who is the host of Decoding Superhuman, which is a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend you to go immediately and subscribe to listening to more of what this guy has to say. He's the head of health optimization here in Europe. It's a practice that many people need to know more about. So, Boomer, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and just introduce yourself to all of these amazing people?
Yeah, sure. So by trade, I work with entrepreneurs who are changing the world to help them optimize their health. And because if I can help an entrepreneur optimize their health, well, they're going to impact so many more people. Uh, and Mahima, I just got to say, it's been too long, and it's really good to catch up with you. But among my many roles these days, you mentioned health optimization practice, which is something that I spend quite a lot of time doing. And in that, what we do is we seek to teach doctors and other practitioners how to optimize for health rather than treat disease.
Oh, wow.
And what's
Love that.
interesting,
That's powerful.
and
Hmm.
let's delve a little bit into that, right?
Yes,
Because if
let's
you think,
unpack that.
let's look at the word healthcare, right? And so healthcare uh, is a little bit of a misnomer. If we think about what we use healthcare for right now, we're going to doctors, particularly when we have symptoms, things like a cough or, God forbid, COVID-19, and we're going to these doctors and seeking to get better from a symptom. It's very rare that you go to a doctor and say, "Hey, doc, I'm pretty healthy, but I want to go from this 80% level to 100 or 120. How do I do that?" And what's even more interesting is that doctors and practitioners aren't necessarily taught how to do that. What the current system does very, very well is if you have a symptom, you have a disease, you have uh, a gunshot wound, you go to these practitioners and they will fix you. That you will, in most cases, likely get better. But where do you go when you're a healthy person and you just want to live at your absolute best? And I know, Mahima, you're all about living at your absolute best. And so in health optimization practice, what we actually do is we do educate these practitioners on how to do that. And I'm happy to go a little bit deeper into that if you want, or we can take the conversation however you want, Mahima.
I love that. I love that so much because, you said like a lot of people, let's say, are around 80% and they're looking at, how they can optimize that. But I have to say that I've been speaking to a lot of people where 80% health would be amazing. They would be like, oh my God, I am so freaking healthy. Okay.
Yeah,
And so, burnout is on the rise.
of course.
Breakdown is on the rise. Panic attacks, disease, yeah,
Yeah.
causing disease. We have chronic pain. We have depression. We have suicide. We have
Hmm.
a lot of things happening in especially what they call first world countries, right?
Yep.
So in countries where we have everything we could potentially need and more, to actually be in our best mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And yet, it's in these cultures that there is a rise in, discomfort within people's health system. And we're starting to see even kids getting depressed, even kids having symptoms and diseases that they never used to have before, right?
Hmm.
So there's something going on in how we're looking after ourselves, what we're putting into our body, and how our mind is affecting our body, and what's happening in the culture as we move more and more into artificial intelligence, computers, connecting online, and all of these things. So I think that the question of health at 80%, as I said, I think everybody, who's listening to this is asking themselves the question, am I even at 80%?
Yeah.
Right? And so let's say that stress is causing people to feel more like they're operating on a lower level of health. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that's just a state of mind or whether that's the reality of the case, right? I don't know. But that's what I'm getting when I bring people onto our courses, and they come and they start training. A lot of them need to focus first on getting into optimum health, because they realize they didn't even realize how far away they'd gone from that until they're in a program like mine where they get to examine themselves much more closely. So would you agree with this?
In terms of, okay, so I guess 80% was just an arbitrary number in terms of something that I threw out there. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the world today, I think it's pretty easy to look at epidemiology and say, 60% of the world has some sort of weight problem. We have, in the developed countries, the leading preventable causes of death are cancer, actually in order would be cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, kind of all of these diseases of modernity, if you will. And so, what I fundamentally agree with, we have these high class problems where now that we are all able to eat and be fed all day long, that there's a tipping point, and we're also connected. Right. And so we're continuously connected. And I had a background in finance at one point, so I know what it's like to have a 24/7 lifestyle. And I'm an entrepreneur now, so I can completely resonate with that. Now, what's interesting is I do think that there's numerous ways to cut the cookie, so to speak, the gluten-free cookie, if you will. And so, there's numerous ways to approach this. And when we start looking at the population, and just sort of how to either heal a population, but also how to just make people better and help them make better decisions. Well, there are some fundamental items, if you will, that could help people. And one of the things that we like to look at in health optimization medicine practice is things like nutrient balancing. And we know that through modern farming practices that most people out there are not necessarily getting the nutrients that they need. And so how do we discover what nutrients that you need? Well, there's a distinct practice of measurement around that. How do we ensure that people have the right sleep hygiene? Well, we know that there's a lot of science around that through the fields of chronobiology. And how do we ensure that people's immune systems are optimized so that a pandemic doesn't come along and cause people to panic unnecessarily, right? And so we can look at all of these different verticals, if you will, through a different lens and say, rather than looking at symptoms, rather than looking at sort of the root cause, if you will, why don't we look at basic principles and help you balance to those basic principles? Does that make sense, Mahima?
Absolutely. And I'm dying to hear more. Keep talking.
Sure.
It's
so
juicy.
Let's get into this. And first, I want to get into it at a very fundamental level here.
Yes.
Because I think what it requires people to do is to start looking at health in a different way. And so if you think about health and how, well, candidly, I grew up looking at it, I thought of it as diet and exercise. And I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was just like, all I care about is sleeping less, working more, and looking good naked. Well, that...
Well, I think you've accomplished that.
We will. You're making me blush, Mahima. So in terms of the sleeping less and working more, well, yeah, I did that for a while, but we know that eventually led to some issues, and I can get into those here in a second. But okay, so instead of looking at health in terms of diet, exercise, why don't we look at health in terms of a different perspective, if you will? And let's go down to fundamentally what we are, the cells. And so if we look at our cells and go back all the way back in evolution, we actually know that our modern cell developed from a marriage between a mitochondria and an ancient bacteria. And let me explain why that's important. Because essentially a mitochondria, ancient bacteria come together and they make our modern cell. We call this a symbiotic relationship. And so your body is actually made up of symbiotic relationships of cells. But we also have different symbiotic relationships within our bodies. Things like bacteria in our gut. We have fungus in our microbiome. We have viruses living throughout us called our virome. And collectively, all of these ohms, if you will, has a name, and it's called the holobiont. And so what I want to encourage people, and what we're actually looking to encourage people to do through health optimization, medicine, and practice, is to not look at health in terms of diet and exercise and looking good naked, because God forbid you actually look at your biochemistry then, but to look at your health in terms of the health of the organisms within your body. And that is that holobiont perspective. And so what we want to encourage everybody to do with health optimization, medicine, and practice is really looking at those individual organisms and determining, are these organisms within my body that make up my body, are they healthy, or are they as healthy as possible? And when we have that information, we seek to really balance it, because after all, our bodies are just a series of networks. And we look to balance those networks so that you can really fully function as a human in this continuously innovating age.
Wow. Okay. So I'm excited. I'm like, I want to get into this. Okay.
Let's delve.
Where do I start? Like, what's my first step to say, I want to get all those, all that checked, that everything's working and symbiotically, vibing together.
Yeah.
And so what would be my first step into this world of, of really taking action to better understand what you've just talked about?
So there are two words that I love how you put it. It's taking action and to better understand, or two phrases, if you will. And let's say you wanted to take action on this. Well, fundamentally, we need to assess where you are now, right?
Okay.
Because what's interesting about the prior approaches to health, whether it be 1970s bodybuilding in Santa Monica, California, or these various diets out there, what people are doing dogmatically is saying, this is right for 7 billion people in this world. And ancestrally, I know, Mahima, you came from a different ancestral background than I did. And, and various people that we've interacted with over time all come from different ancestral backgrounds. And so to say something is right for all 7 billion people in this world is candidly kind of a crock of shit. And so when we look at this, and you haven't told me whether or not I can curse on the show, but
listen, I curse the most out of most people. Like I'll curse anyone. So go for it.
Okay. So when we start looking at that, like, how do we actually look at not just an ancestral perspective, but the health of our organisms? It requires a certain amount of measurement. And so when either I'm working with somebody or one of our health optimization practitioners is working with somebody, what we do is we like to assess people at the level of the metabolome. And so what I just outlined for you there was something called the holobiont, which is just simply that you are a collection of organisms. And that means that in order to measure your health, we need to measure the health of your organisms. The way we do that is through something called metabolomics.
Okay.
And so let's unpack what metabolomics is, because that's a big, hefty word for a lot of people. And so if you think about the most popular of the omics, it's probably genetics and genomics, if you want to just keep with the omics theme. And genomics is the blueprint of you. It's how you should be if you were kind of raised in a petri dish, if you will. Now, if you take it down from genomics, or the blueprint of you, you have the epigenome, which is the environmental factors on basically how you were raised, the environment you were raised in, the different aspects of that environment, and the food you intake. And that is the impact of the environment on your genome. Think of it in terms of
Say what?
Yeah, exactly. So let's break it down into simplistic terms here, right? So if you bought a house,
I believe in the KISS. Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep it simple.
Yeah,
Okay.
keep it super simple.
Yep.
Right?
So here we go. If you buy a house, you get a blueprint. That's your genetics, right? If you buy a piece of land and you want to build a house, you get a blueprint.
Okay.
That's from your architect. Those are
Yeah.
your genetics. Then
Okay.
you build that house, and how many times does that house end up exactly as the blueprint? Almost never.
Mm-hmm.
That's your epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's take you down another level to the metabolome. The
Mm-hmm.
metabolome is just actually the most simple to understand of them all. It's where your health currently is and where it has been for the past couple of weeks.
Okay.
And so, what we're actually doing is we're looking at your health on that cellular level, and we're looking at your bacteria's health on sort of that level where you are now. And
Okay.
so when we're assessing you and measuring you to say, are you health optimized, or what can we do to identify uh, exactly what you need, what we're doing is we're assessing you at that metabolome so that we understand where you are now. So simply put, when we want to get started down this path, measurement is the first step. And that measurement will allow us to see where you are now. It allows me to meet a client where they are, and allows me to see what they need in terms of vitamins, minerals, in terms of potentially environmental adjustments, because people have things like mercury toxicity, people have things like lead toxicity, and they may even have
So are
exposure.
these tests, are you saying like I'm going to need to take a test basically that measures all of these different things?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be my starting point,
Starting
right?
point right there.
Starting point. So first point would be call up Boomer so he can dissect all of this stuff and make, so he can
or
translate.
any health optimization practitioner will be able to do it.
Okay, but in this case, we're talking to you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you are turning the people who are listening to this on, those who are
Sure.
getting turned on and those who are getting turned off. That's fine too, because, I believe that we all have the people that we speak to and speak for. And so this might not be everyone's cup of tea,
Of
but for
course.
those that are getting inspired to look at their health from a different perspective, a more disruptive perspective, a more broad perspective, a different way of looking at
Mm-hmm.
health. Because I honestly have just been very much about nutrition, stress reduction, and what was the other thing you said? Sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are for me the holy trilogy. And then of course you can add sleep into that, but that's kind of like where most people are at. So
Yep.
bringing in this different type of conversation
Mm-hmm.
where I personally have to really concentrate, because whenever I don't know much about something, I notice that my ego mind tends to drift off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I need to pull it back. I don't know if anyone else experiences this. And I
Of
need to
course.
pull it back and say, focus, because it's
Yep.
new. It's something new that wants to come through. And when we,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to concentrate a bit more when something isn't familiar to us. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying that for anyone who feels like me, okay, it is okay. It is normal that you might be going, what? Like, okay. And then there's some of you, you're versed in this language and, you're completely at home with it. So that's fine. But I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you, for me personally, I am stretching myself to understand all of these different terms. I do find it, I've actually worked with Boomer, and I was going through, a phase where I was moving into menopause, right? And I found that during that phase, I really felt like I kind of lost a bit control of my body, and I just was gaining weight. I was getting really tired in the middle of the afternoon. I needed a nap. And so after actually going through Boomer's system, where he did these various tests and recommended various different minerals and way of eating and all kinds of things, I was actually able to optimize, started to feel like I was losing that weight and starting to get more energy in the afternoon, where I was literally at 3 o'clock, just, head down on my pillow. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a 10-minute power nap. I needed to sleep for 1 hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is under a lot of pressure, because at that time that I was getting in touch with Boomer, we were traveling all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Almost, I would say, like half of the year, we were living out of a suitcase, and in a different city, meeting people and transforming people's mindsets and heart sets. So I was at a very high performance level when that was all going on, right? So I know that this stuff works from my personal experience with this, and it is definitely an aspect of my health that I want to continue investing in understanding, and also continuing to use these strategies because they are super powerful. Now, I think the thing that I kind of want to take people's attention back to is
Mm-hmm.
is that idea of just changing your mindset in how you think about health, that it's not about waiting until something happens, until you start getting some symptoms and all of that before we stop and say, I want to get healthy again, right? It's how can we prevent
Mm-hmm.
stuff from happening, because we're living a more preventative lifestyle, right? So I
Absolutely.
think I would ask you, Boomer, if you could give like your 3 top tips on preventative, you can call it medicine, you can call it health practice, daily practice, however we want to kind of coin the term right
Yeah.
now, of, be able to perform at a high level and prevent yourself from, to have the optimized, what you called it, the immune system boost and all of that. So
Yeah.
would you have like 3 specific tips on that? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, sweetheart.
You
So,
are, but I just want to back up because there's a couple of points that you hinted on there that I just want to go a little bit more into.
okay,
So,
cool.
why am I so focused on health optimization, and why do I think people should focus on it now rather than waiting for symptoms? If you look at uh, kind of population level statistics, roughly when people reach the age of 40, their health starts to decline. It starts to decline pretty rapidly. And so what's actually interesting is that when you look at that, you say, okay, we've done all of this work through modern medicine, and modern medicine is a great thing. We've done a lot of work to extend what is called lifespan. We can look at the average life of somebody and see that in the past 300 years, it's gone from, kind of the 30 to 40 range up into the 80s in certain countries. But the question is what does the quality of life look like? And to me, I care very much about that quality of life, and the people that I work with care very much about that quality of life. They want their brains working very well into their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right up until that point when they pass on to other worlds, right? And so I care very much about that quality of life, or using another phrase that David Sinclair coined, which is called health span. And so just think of when you start to look at this in terms of how do I improve my quality of life over the long term so that I don't just steadily decline in my 40s and my 50s. Well, we're really focused on health span, and the way to focus on health span is through health optimization and health optimization practice. Now, let's come to your question, Mahima, because you put me on the spot there, and I am not one that's able to both talk and think at the same time. And so let's see the 3 things that I would do to ensure that people start optimizing their health. Let's start with number 1, which is and I'm going to keep it very basic. If you want me to go into a much more, we can even go esoteric or into technology and that stuff. We can talk about that later. But
Okay.
3 things that I would do that are very basic. I would focus on stress first. The reason why I say stress first, and I encourage people to stress well, is
Mm.
because stress can be an asset in many ways. If you think about stress as a great motivator to get something done, positive stress is a way of unlocking flow states. I encourage people to stress well. And one of the best ways that I know how to stress well, and I know, Mahima, you're a fan of this one, is through meditation. And so meditation, if you don't have a meditation practice, somebody should knock on your door and tell you, but there's dozens of meditation apps out there.
Okay, let me talk about this since this is
Okay,
my superpower.
please, let's
Okay,
do it. Let's do
so
it.
what can I give you as a tip to get into to start getting into
Let's do
meditation
it.
right
I want
now?
to hear how do you get everyone to meditate, Mahima?
Okay, so first of all, let's take away the scary word meditation,
Uh-oh.
meditation. Like
Yeah.
let's decode it. Let's decode
Yeah.
it. So Meditation is a self-love practice. Okay? Meditation equals self-love practice. Okay? Self-love is the ability to be with yourself as you are right now, with all of your thoughts, all of your feelings, all of your, everything that you are right now, to be comfortable in your skin as you are right now. So that is self-love, the ability to be with yourself without needing to be distracted, without needing to play with your phone, without needing to be doing something, to listen and be with you. So if there's anyone out there who's looking to just get this thing started, that's the approach that I want you to think about this, right? Like, if you do not know what's going on inside of you, you cannot operate on a high emotional intelligence, high vibrational frequency level. If you don't know that you're angry, if you don't know that you're sad, if you don't know that you're frustrated, if you don't know how to be joyful, how to be peaceful, how to be loving, if you don't know how to modulate what's happening inside of you, it's very difficult to operate well in the world. So meditation is self-knowledge. It is getting to know what's going on inside of you and getting to understand how to modulate your energies, your thoughts, and your feelings so that you can operate as you want to operate and don't feel like you are a victim of your mindset, a victim of your emotional state, and that you have no control over yourself, and everywhere your mind goes, you go, everywhere your emotions go, you go, and you actually fully identify with yourself as your thoughts and your feelings. So I'm going a little bit deeper now, but you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings, you are the spirit that is living temporarily in this human body. You came into the world as pure spirit, and you're going to leave this world as pure spirit. This body is a vehicle through which your spirit operates on a daily basis. Meditation is getting deeper in connection with your spirit. That's what meditation is. Self-love, self-connection, and self-reflection, ability to reflect on yourself. So it sounds complex at first because we don't understand the way, the avenue to it. So here's the trick: stillness, silence. So if you can just give yourself, starting with 5 minutes a day, where you simply keep quiet and breathe deeply. That's it. Observing what's going on. And it doesn't matter if your mind's very active, if you feel like, just, that's fine. Just keep breathing and just time that 5 minutes. And then you're going to extend that. You're going to do that 5 minutes for like a week. Just 5 minutes of stillness and deep breathing. And then you're going to extend that after a week to 10 minutes of just deep breathing and observing yourself. And this is another week of that. And then you just keep extending for as long as you want to. You can go up to 20 minutes of just sitting, deep breathing. Now, why is the deep breathing important? Your breath cannot go into the past or the future. Your breath is always only here and now. So as you breathe deeply, you get more fully present into your body. A lot of us are not even living in our body. And that brings me to another point. And that's why we get out of balance with our health, because we're not in our body feeling and experiencing through our senses, through our eyes, through our touch, through our smell. We're not present. We're up in our head, and that's somewhere. Where's the head? Where's your mind? You wouldn't point to the body, right? So through the breathing, you come into connection with your physical body, and when you connect it to your physical body, you can start listening. You can start listening to your body, and your body will tell you, no. If you continue like this, you are going to break down. You are going to burn out. If you continue down this path, this is this listening that you get into meditation, and that's where the self-modulation comes in. Like, I need to respect myself. I am running on empty, right? And a lot of us miss those signs because we're not able to give ourselves that self-love, the daily practice of listening and being with ourselves and honoring what's going on inside of us. So yeah, as you can see, Boomer, I could go on and on this topic. So I think I'm going to drop it right there, right? For anyone who's listening, I've given you a strategy you can start to use immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just working with your breath and being in stillness and observing what's going on. And that will immediately get you into deeper states of self-awareness. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, meditation is super powerful. Don't focus on techniques when you think meditation. Use a technique, but it's not about the technique. It's about where the technique is trying to point you to, right? So I get people caught up very much in breathe through the in the left nostril, breathe out of the right nostril. And they're so busy with that technique that they actually forget what they're trying to do with the technique, right? So use a technique, but don't stay on the focus of the technique. Stay
Mm-hmm.
on the result that the technique wants to show you. Yeah.
Amazing. So meditation was number one. Number two, if we're going to go back to that, let's go down. So I said stress well and meditation were number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is sleep well. The world has a sleep issue. If you look at my home country, in the United States, the average person sleeps less than 7 hours a night. We know, statistically speaking, that there's only 3% of the population that can get away with less than 7 hours a night. And so what I encourage people to do is to find ways to get 7 hours a night. And if you don't, well, I would start where you are now and aim to improve in those 15-minute increments. I'm a big fan of micro habit changes because if I tell you tonight, Mahima, go and get 8 hours of sleep and you're getting 4, well, you're going to fire me, and you should. But if I can tell you how to get 4 hours and 15 minutes and we can start looking at your time schedule and we can gradually build up, well, set your goals that are reachable.
Yeah.
And then over time, you'll achieve that. So sleep well would be number two.
Love it.
And we can talk about different ways to hijack that and make it better as well. And then number three, I would say, is some degree of measurement. So you heard me earlier talk about this, what may seem complicated, but is really not, this measurement structure. Now, what I'm doing with both number one and number three are bringing a level of awareness to what you're doing during the day. And so by measurement, what do I want you to do? You can go out and get those tests that I mentioned, or you can start by just simply opening up an Excel spreadsheet or taking a journal and starting to pay attention to different aspects of your day. And this may start with a problem that you're trying to solve, a personal problem, and that could be sleep. And there's surveys out there like the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index that will help you. You can print it out, put it at your bedside, and they'll help you identify sleep issues that you have. You have surveys out there like the Institute of
I
Function.
want to unpack that a little bit.
Please.
So, can you give me an example of some of the sleep issues that some people might find?
One of the most common ones among our crowd, Mahima, the entrepreneurs, is waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to get back to sleep.
Okay.
It's sort of a stress-induced insomnia, if you will.
Yeah.
Other common sleep issues include not being able to get to sleep, not being able to get out of bed, different aspects of that. It just really... There are so many different types of sleep issues, but those are the three fundamental ones that we generally see people with.
Okay. Yes. Oh, and so, is there any a tip you can give right now off of the bat for anyone who might fall into, let's say, the not being able, waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back to sleep again?
Yeah, sure. Assuming that they're meditating, because you just gave everybody the guide to getting started there.
Yeah.
Let's assume that they're meditating. One thing that I would like people to pay attention to is the electronic use. Electronics are ubiquitous in our culture. I have a cell phone. I have a Microsoft Surface. I don't even have an iPad anymore. I have a Kindle. I have a desktop. I have all of these things. And if you are an entrepreneur or somebody who's just looking to elevate their performance, chances are you're on those devices very often, very frequently, and oftentimes late into the night. So let's say the first step there would be to just remove them from the evening. And try to avoid things like TV even late at night, because blue light does damage your melatonin concentration, which can impact your sleep. Now, let's say you can't do that, right? Let's say you are working right up until you go to bed, or at least 30 minutes before. Well, there are different services out there that will help you protect your eyes. And so what we're really doing here is protecting our eyes from getting that sensorial cue of blue light that is preventing you from going to sleep. And so what can we do? We can get, and mine are not in this room, but we can get those very sexy orange glasses, throw those on, and those will prevent us from actually absorbing that blue light and disrupting our sleep. We can also get screen filters. The iPhone comes inbuilt with night shift, which is better than nothing, but night shift is not exactly the best thing. Android, there's something called Twilight that people can install for free. And then on your desktop, you can use f.lux, which is a free app as well. And so just paying attention. And again, number one and number three, I'm just trying to bring awareness to people's lives. Paying attention to that amount of screen time that you have can definitely help in terms of waking up in the middle of the night. The second thing that I'll say, and this is and you didn't ask me for a second thing, Mahima, but I'm going to interject this because it's so effective with my clients in particular, is having a journal by your bedside. And so before you go to bed, writing everything that's on your mind out there. I call mine sort of like it's almost like a vomit journal in a way, because it's just what's going on in my head. Mm-hmm. But I also, in the middle of the night, if I do wake up for some reason, I'll write down whatever's going on in my head right there. My brain trusts that it's there in the morning. And so I will be able to get back to sleep. And so for people, that's just two quick ways that you can actually sleep a lot better starting tonight.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay, and now another thing. So I want to go back to the topic of you supporting doctors and to kind of pivot on their way of thinking about things, right? So tell us a bit more about that story.
So really my entire life, but about 2 years ago, I was trying to build an operating model for human performance, which essentially looked like it would essentially look like an Excel model, if you will, for the human body and how to get you to focus better, to move better, etc. And I was hosting Decoding Superhuman, which is my podcast and top 250 careers podcast globally. And on that time, I had a gentleman on the podcast called Dr. Ted Achikoso. We were scheduled to speak for 45 minutes. We spoke for 3 hours. And afterwards, I said, "Hey, how do I learn from you?" And I thought he was joking, but he invited me to help him launch his foundation into Europe. And so the Health Optimization Medicine and Practice Foundation is a non-for-profit education foundation, which does seek to educate doctors and practitioners on how to optimize for health rather than treating disease. And so what we're doing there is taking this holobiont perspective and using that to perform what is called nutrient balancing. And if you are a doctor, you can perform hormone balancing as well. And what Health Optimization Medicine and Practice does is, giving these doctors who, candidly, these doctors aren't taught these things in med school. Med school is very disease focused, and we are, as a society globally, very good in most places at treating certain types of disease, but they give them a different perspective on things like nutrition, on nutrient balancing, on testing. What we do is we educate people through several pillars, and those pillars being evolutionary medicine, the exposome, or the health of your environment, chronobiology, or sleep, bioenergetics, which is the health of your mitochondria, or the energy sources of your cells. We look at metabolomics, which is that testing process that I talked about earlier. We look at the gut immune system, which is really what's interesting is that about 20 years ago, we would have said that the lymphatic system is one of the largest sources of detoxification in the body. But we now know that the gut immune system is so very important, especially in times like now that we live in. And so we take these different pillars, these different verticals, and we have an education platform for these doctors and practitioners. So you don't have to be a doctor per se to go through it. So that you can go out and then implement these in your practice. And so I represent Europe. We have practitioners in several countries around the globe, and it's a beautiful education platform. I encourage people to check it out.
That's amazing. Love it, love it, love it. So, give us a link on that. What is the
Sure.
link?
So for the foundation, it's homehope.org. So HOMEHOPE.org.
That's easy to remember. Homehope.org. For those of you that are fascinated with this and want to dig deeper and dive in. Yes?
Yeah.
So, Boom, this has been really, as always, super illuminating. I have
Thank you.
loved this conversation. And, I think we've definitely brought some great ideas to people to think about. And hopefully they'll leave this space of hearing this interview a little bit more inspired to really optimize your health by understanding what it's going to take outside of the traditional methods that we know about, and hack your system, because I really do believe that hacking our system, which means getting out of limiting beliefs. And it's very easy to not even realize you in a limiting belief pattern when everybody else is in that pattern, right? A way of thinking about something. So, for example, Boomer talked about bringing this to doctors and bringing this to practitioners who have been taught this, this is how things work. And then it's very disruptive to hear something else. Yeah. But I mean, we're moving in times right now where there is a lot of disruption, and there are a lot of schools of thought working together like it has not been in the past. Right. So, what I would love to do is encourage people to find your voice. I encourage you to find your voice. I encourage you to think outside of the box and to start being willing to bring some of those thoughts that maybe you get inspired through Boomer, or you get inspired through the Mahima mindset, or you get inspired through whoever is going to inspire you. I was having the great fortune to have teachers come into my life at times in my life where I was down, emotionally, mentally, and just had these people come in, and I could recognize they had something to teach me. They had something to offer and enrich my life. So I encourage you to look for people that are doing things outside of the box and let them inspire you. So, Boomer, how can people get in touch with you if they want to just come directly to you and find out more about what you're up to?
Decoding Superhuman is the easiest way.
Okay.
So there's a podcast, as I've mentioned before, Instagram, the website. All of it is under Decoding Superhuman.
Decodingsuperhuman.com. Okay.
Correct.
And is there a little gift or something waiting for them when they go?
Oh yeah, if you go there, I change this regularly because people that are on either my distribution list, or I would just encourage people to get on the distribution list, because I give away a lot of free shit, and a lot of this stuff that you and I are talking about, I get more in depth in, and I explain it to people, and I just give it away for free because I'm not doing Decoding Superhuman for money. I'm doing it to spread a message.
Okay, I love that. But then I need to ask you, because this is what I love. Like, how do you make money? Because I want people out there to know that you can follow your passion and make money.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But then how do you monetize this, Boomer? Because I don't want people to misunderstand.
Oh,
Right?
of course.
Because we do tend to think that we need to have our regular job, which we hate, and then this is our passion, which doesn't make money. So I just want to make sure that people understand that you're on the same wavelength as me, which is, great, do what you love, follow your passion, but also figure out how to monetize, around what you truly are gifted at. So how do you monetize this?
This is a very good question, Mahima, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I, like you, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do what I love. And so, if you look at monetization of this, the podcast gets monetized through advertisements.
Mm-hmm.
I have a health consulting practice where I work with no more than 15 individuals at any given time. And I also work in business development and strategy at a company called Transcriptions, which actually goes to serve the Health Optimization Medicine and Practice Foundation in terms of the products that we produce. So everything I do is all revolving around this idea of elevating the human experience through health. And we're really just seeking to push that needle of health forward. So yeah, I found a way to monetize it through various different aspects.
I love that. I love that so much. You're such a great example of, free thinker, but also working as a team leader and supporting, others to thrive while working together. Because I know you have a team. You're not,
Mhm.
singular. The same way with me. When people think about the Mahima mindset, yes, I'm Mahima. It's my, thesis, but I could never get to the level of success that I have got to on my own. I've had to learn how to be a leader. I've had to learn how to inspire people to be able to work together to create something beautiful in the world. You're a great example of that, Boomer.
Thank
Please
you.
keep on doing what you're doing. I wish you the greatest success. I know that anyone who, has the wisdom to take action and, be in your field of illumination is going to come out of it a better person in better health. I've
Thank you.
experienced it and I wanted you to experience it. And that's why I brought Boomer here to you today. So thank you, Boomer, for being here. I appreciate you. I love you. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Mahima. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to talk to you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thanks everyone for listening and keep tuning in to these amazing conversations with incredible people. Mwah. Love you and have a wonderful time until we meet again. Bye, guys.